Okay, so today we're going to like really dive deep into the world of aviation.
All right.
And, when we talk about the aviation industry, based on all this material you sent over, it's like, you immediately think of airplanes, right?
Of course. Yeah.
But it's way more than just that.
Oh, yeah.
It's a whole huge landscape. We're talking everything from how people and cargo like move around the world
Right.
to, the companies that are building those planes, the stuff happening on the ground at the airports,
Yeah.
even its role in like, national defense.
Mm-hmm.
So our goal in this deep dive, tailored for you, of course, is to really unpack these like key areas, figure out, why this whole ecosystem is so important economically, and explore some of the, the innovations that are coming up on the horizon.
Absolutely. And to kind of set the stage, it's important to make that distinction between what we think of as just the airline industry
Right.
and the broader aviation industry.
Yeah.
Airlines, those names, like Delta, Emirates, Singapore Airlines,
Mm-hmm.
they're all about moving passengers and cargo.
Right. They each have their own like, business model and all that.
Yeah. You see budget carriers operating totally differently from like those huge international airlines, right?
Exactly.
But the aviation industry is like the whole machine that makes all that flying possible.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about the manufacturing giants like Boeing and Airbus
Yeah.
who are designing and building the aircraft. Then you've got this massive infrastructure of the airports,
Right.
air traffic control, making sure everything's safe, cargo logistics,
Yeah.
and all the regulatory bodies setting those rules of the sky.
Mm-hmm.
So let's zoom in on some of these like key sectors,
Yeah.
starting with the commercial airline sector.
Which I think is fair to say is really the backbone of global travel as we know it.
Totally.
Think about it. This is what lets people connect with family and friends across continents.
Right.
Businesses operating on an international scale,
Yeah.
fueling a lot of that tourism industry.
Yeah. It's hard to overstate how important it is to like connecting, an increasingly global society.
It's fundamental, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's not even just about moving people. This sector creates a ton of jobs.
Yeah.
Like, obviously, there's the pilots and the cabin crew.
Right.
But then you think about all the people working at airports,
Yeah.
the baggage handlers, security, retail, all of that. And the hospitality industry that depends on tourism.
Mm-hmm.
The numbers are huge.
Yeah.
So let's move on to the companies that actually make these incredible flying machines.
Okay.
The aircraft manufacturers.
When you're talking about aircraft manufacturers, it's really Boeing and Airbus that dominate.
Yeah.
They're responsible for designing, engineering, producing pretty much all the commercial aircraft that you see in the sky.
Right.
But something that I think is really interesting is that you are starting to see some new players and some really exciting technological developments.
Oh, yeah.
Things like electric aircraft, which could totally revolutionize short-haul travel. And there's a lot of investment in sustainable aviation fuels.
Oh, interesting.
So that's fuels made from something other than, fossil fuels.
Oh, cool.
Like biomass or even captured carbon as the industry tries to be, more environmentally friendly.
Makes sense.
One of the big challenges for those electric aircraft, though, is improving the battery density
Oh, yeah.
to get to a range that's like commercially viable for those longer flights.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
That whole push for sustainability
Yeah.
actually reminds me of another really interesting sector.
Yeah.
The drones.
Mm-hmm.
They've gone way beyond just being like a hobbyist toy now.
Yeah.
They're used in logistics for deliveries,
Right.
surveillance,
Sure.
even emergency response.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty crazy.
And I think what's really exciting is their potential for even broader applications.
Yeah.
As regulations change, we could see them playing a much bigger role in cargo transport,
Wow.
especially for those last mile deliveries.
Right.
And, making inspections of important infrastructure like bridges and power lines
Right.
much more efficient and safer.
That makes sense.
Some of the regulatory hurdles right now are airspace management and safety protocols for operating drones in those more complex environments.
Right.
Yeah.
And rounding out these key sectors, we have military aviation,
Yeah.
which plays a huge role in national security and is often like at the very forefront of, technological advancement.
Absolutely. I mean, the advances that come out of military aviation often have a ripple effect,
Yeah.
influencing the whole aviation sector
Yeah.
in terms of new materials, advanced technologies, even concepts for managing air traffic more effectively.
Interesting.
Yeah, that constant drive to, achieve greater speed, stealth capabilities, and efficiency in military aircraft
Yeah.
often leads to innovations that end up in, civilian aviation later on.
That's really cool. So we've got a pretty good understanding of all the different parts of this aviation world now,
Right.
but let's talk about why this is so important on a larger scale. What's the real economic impact here?
Well, I think you have to start with globalization.
Yep.
International business and trade today just wouldn't be the same without aviation.
Wow.
It lets companies manage these complex global supply chains,
Yeah.
makes it possible to have those essential face-to-face meetings across continents.
Right.
And as we were talking about before, is crucial for the tourism sector to thrive.
Mm.
If you connect that to the bigger picture,
Yeah.
it's hard to imagine the global economy we have today without, a really strong and efficient aviation network.
Yeah.
Without aviation, the modern economy as we know it simply wouldn't exist.
It's almost something we take for granted, right?
Yeah,
But think about it. Without the ability to move people and goods quickly across these huge distances,
yeah,
so many industries would just stop.
right.
And then there's the massive number of jobs created by the aviation sector.
Exactly. Millions of jobs supported all over the world.
Wow.
And it's such a diverse range of roles
Yeah.
beyond those obvious airline positions. You've got engineers designing the next generation of aircraft,
Yeah.
factory workers building them,
Right.
logistics experts managing the flow of all that cargo,
Mm-hmm.
and a ton of service industry jobs that directly support air travel.
That's crazy.
Every time a plane takes off, it's the result of this incredibly complex network of people working behind the scenes.
Yeah, that's a great way to think about it.
Yeah.
And beyond just those direct jobs, the aviation industry makes a huge contribution to a country's GDP.
What's really interesting here is that this economic contribution is big in both developed and developing nations.
Really?
Yeah, a strong aviation sector can really help boost economic growth and opportunity.
Interesting.
And we can't forget about air cargo.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, for high-value things that are time-sensitive,
Mhm.
like medicines that have to be kept at a certain temperature,
Yeah.
electronics, or even food that could go bad quickly.
Yeah,
Air freight is often the only way to go,
that makes sense.
making it absolutely vital for global trade.
Mm. So it's clear that aviation is incredibly important right now.
Right.
But what about the future?
Yeah.
What are some of the trends and innovations that are going to shape where the industry goes next?
Well, technology is definitely going to be a huge driver of change.
Okay.
We're already seeing AI and automation being used to make things safer,
Yeah.
optimize flight paths to save fuel,
Right.
and improve how efficiently things run overall.
Mm-hmm.
The Internet of Things and big data are also making flight operations smarter,
Okay.
like predicting when parts might need maintenance.
Oh, wow.
So you can do proactive repairs and improve safety,
That's awesome.
and even optimizing how passengers move through airports.
Interesting.
And then there's this renewed interest in supersonic and even hypersonic travel,
Yeah.
which could shorten travel times on those really long flights.
I know, right? Imagine crossing the Atlantic in just a couple of hours.
Yeah,
It still feels like science fiction, but it seems like it might actually happen.
there's definitely some momentum there. Yeah.
And, of course, another huge focus is sustainability.
Yeah.
It seems like every industry is dealing with this now,
Right.
and aviation is no different.
Absolutely. There's pressure from regulators, from consumers who care about the environment,
Yeah.
and even from within the industry itself
Right.
to cut carbon emissions.
Mm.
So we're seeing a lot of investment in greener alternatives like those sustainable aviation fuels
Yeah.
from non-fossil fuel sources,
Right.
and the development of electric aircraft, which will probably focus on shorter routes at first,
Right.
but could really change things in the long run.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
It's a tough challenge trying to balance the need for global connectivity with protecting the environment.
Absolutely.
And we can't forget about the pandemic,
Oh, yeah.
which really shook up the whole aviation industry.
It really did. Yeah.
Airlines had to rethink their entire strategies as travel patterns changed so much.
Right.
Many had to adapt to new passenger expectations about health and safety.
Yeah. And come up with new business models to stay competitive in a market that was suddenly so unpredictable.
Right.
The future, as always, has both challenges to overcome and exciting opportunities.
Totally. So as we start to wrap up this deep dive, it really highlights how aviation is this vast and vital ecosystem.
Yeah.
It's way more than just the airplanes we see flying around.
Right.
Thinking about some of those articles you might have seen about airline profitability,
Mm.
it's clear how all these different sectors we talked about,
Right.
from manufacturing costs to airport fees,
Yeah.
affect how well they do financially.
Exactly. It's this intricate web that connects our global economies, but it also drives innovation and has this huge impact on the world.
It does, yeah.
Hmm.
So as you're thinking about all this, consider the evolution and future possibilities within aviation.
Yeah.
All these new technologies, the increasing focus on sustainability.
Right.
How do you think it will change global connectivity and economies in the years to come? You might have read about those massive investments in sustainable fuels and potentially revolutionary tech like supersonic flight.
Right.
What do you think will be the most surprising thing about air travel in the next 10 years?
Mm-hmm.
It's definitely something to think about.
It is.
Thanks for joining me for this deep dive.
Of course, it was a pleasure being here.
I hope you enjoyed it.
I did.
Until next time.
See you then. Bye.